Hey guys, what's up? We're back with some more Warframe action, and today we're going to be talking about Titania. So, Titania is a Warframe that people don't seem to like using, especially at this particular point in time. Well, some people call her bad, some people call her useless, some people throw her in the trash can, and some people say that there is absolutely no scenario in the game right now that would allow Titania to actually be useful in any way, shape, or form. Well, hold on to your hats. Hold on to your hats, everyone. If you're not wearing a hat, grab a hat, put it on, and then hold on to your hats, because I'm potentially going to say something very, very controversial. Here we go. Titania is actually not that bad. Now, why is Titania not that bad? Why is Titania not the worst Warframe in the history of Warframes and needs to be deleted from the game because she's absolutely trash garbage? Why is she not that? Well, it turns out there is at least one scenario where Titania is actually really, really useful. And it is a bit of a stretch. It's not a scenario that you'll come across all too often. But it's a scenario nonetheless where Titania actually shines a lot better than like any other damaged Warframe in the game. 43 Lephantis assassination. With or without elemental enhancement, that doesn't really count, doesn't really make any difference. Titania works really, really well against Lephantis and Lephantis types, so that includes the great big mini Lephantis type boss that shows up during Operation Plaguestar. That includes all forms of Sorty Lephantis, etc, etc, etc. All forms, what am I talking about? So, she does really, really well because her Exalted weapon is a sort of pinpoint accuracy type weapon, as opposed to maces that can't target Lephantis' weak spots, as opposed to Excaliburs, which is a bit of an AoE slash type of thing. I don't think that's effective against Lephantis. Other ones are just not as accurate, I think. Anyway, and also she has a few things that could make her less susceptible to Lephantis' abilities. Now, that being said, she does need a rework, and DE, I think they have announced that they are in the process of reworking Titania, so why not have a chit-chat about what extra buffs, what changes we should give to Titania in order to make her more useful and a more fleshed out, well-rounded, and more overall useful Warframe in the game. So, what do I not like about Titania? Well, everything I don't like about Titania basically revolves around this notion that her 1, her 2, and her 3 are crowd control abilities that have these small variations that are not really, like, they're either not enough of a variation to variate between themselves, is that even a word, or the variations are actually a problem for the ability itself. So we'll just go through the list of her abilities, and I'll talk about what changes I want to make. I'll also talk about her passive, which I'll start off first, because that passive does need to go. It's kind of useless. Alright, so what is that passive? That passive is this, right? So we do a bullet jump, and we leave a bit of a trampoline. That's what these lines are right here that you can see. They're going up, these little green lines. It's a trampoline that lets your allies do a better bullet jump by, bullet jumping off that little trampoline. However, there's two problems with that. First and foremost is nobody uses that ever. Like, I don't think I've ever made any use of an Allied Titania's trampoline. Now, granted, I've not really seen that many Allied Titanias, but the ones that are Allied Titanias, they come into the second problem, which is this is Razor Wing. And when you're in Razor Wing, you have absolutely no access to using the trampoline whatsoever. There's absolutely no way of making the trampoline work, because you can't bullet jump in Arcwing mode, you can't bullet jump in Razor Wing mode, you just can't. So, we're talking about a passive that is completely inaccessible when you're using the Exalted abilities, when you're using Razor Wing, and therefore when you're shooting with Dexpixia and Diwata. It's totally inaccessible, and that's really bad. right? That's just really bad design. That a passive is inaccessible because you press the button. So the change that I want to make is this. Instead of having a trampoline, we should have a passive that has everything to do with Titania's idle animations, which is when she gets around to idling. There we go. Butterfly swarm. There are butterflies that fly around Titania. She has access to these butterflies both in mega size mode and in fun size mode, which means that the Razor Wing passive should actually be her actual passive. These butterflies should therefore just be constantly flying around Titania. They'll seek out enemies and attack them. They'll probably do a little bit of damage, but not a lot. In Razor Wing, they actually do a decent-ish amount of damage, but not a lot. You don't really rely on them, at least I don't think you're meant to rely on them for damage. These butterflies can die, they can be shot at, they can, of course, draw fire away from Titania, which will basically increase her survivability. And when they die, instead of just dying forever, the idea is to have them regenerate after about 10 seconds, 15 seconds, whatever duration makes the most sense and isn't like ludicrously overpowered. And I'm thinking in terms of numbers of butterflies, I'm thinking about 6. So for example, Titania has 6 butterflies, one of them goes out and dies, then for 15 seconds Titania only has 5 butterflies, and then the butterfly that died erupts from a cocoon, or maybe not a cocoon, I don't know, but the 6th butterfly returns and does its own thing. Now, because these butterflies are not doing that much damage, you may be thinking, wow, this is like actually useless. Aside from drawing fire, these butterflies are actually useless. So we should give these butterflies some extra utility. And the first utility I'm thinking of is health leeching. And what that kind of looks like is, if I refer you to another game that I used to play, that I don't play anymore because it's a little bit too stressful and I have a full-time job and I don't have time for that stuff, Heroes of the Storm. In Heroes of the Storm, there is a hero called Anubarak. For those Warcraft nerds out there, Warcraft fans, he is a Crypt Lord. He is a giant undead beetle. Well, Anubarak is actually a king. A giant undead Nerubian king beetle type thing. And one of his ultimates is called Locust Swarm. Now, Locust Swarm erupts a giant swarm of locusts which then fly around Anubarak, and when he comes in contact with a nearby enemy, those locusts will then attack that enemy, and in the process they will actually actively heal Anubarak as they are attacking an enemy. So the idea with the butterfly swarm is to attack nearby enemies and for Titania to passively heal as a direct function of the butterflies attacking enemies. So that could be one idea. That would allow Titania to become a bit of a rage tank, passively healing herself, meaning that she can actually lose a bit of health to gain some energy from rage, hunter adrenaline, etc, etc. Alternatively, and this one would be one that I would prefer actually, having these butterflies be an energy leech. So as long as they are attacking enemies, Titania is passively regenerating energy, maybe 1 or 2 like per hit. That'd be pretty cool. So if there are about 6 enemies near her and the butterflies are all attacking those enemies, then you could be getting 12 energy a second, and hopefully this would be like an energy leech that would also work during Razor Wing. I'll talk a little bit more about Razor Wing and this kind of stuff later, but it's that kind of thing where like you just basically turn Titania into a damage sort of caster frame with 2 Exalteds. So that could be pretty cool. Turn her into a sort of Gundam with, for the Gundam nerds out there, there are some Gundam that can actually regenerate their energy through nuclear power. I am, of course, referring to, say, Strike Freedom, Infinite Justice, Regular Justice with their Neutron Jammer Cancellors. They're able to regenerate energy on the fly, as opposed to other Gundam that actively run out of energy at some point. So that's the kind of thing that I kind of want to have happen with Titania, turn her into a bit of a Gundam. That'd be pretty cool. But otherwise, just having butterflies that fly around and attack enemies, that could be really, really cool. Okay, let's talk about her 1. Now her 1 being, what did I call it? Spellbind. There's actually nothing wrong with Spellbind. It does exactly what it needs to do for an ability that only uses 25 energy at base. With efficiency, it obviously uses less energy, or without efficiency, it uses more energy, etc, etc. It does what it needs to do. And in fact, it does another great thing, which is if you shoot it at your feet, you spellbind yourself, which makes you immune to procs, including cold procs, which means that Titania is particularly useful with something like the lens, because she can't cold proc herself, which means she's less likely to blow herself up. Of course, she does have low health, low shields, so she can still blow herself up. Don't blow yourself up. There's only one thing I might do for Spellbind, if any changes to be made to Spellbind. It's just to increase the base duration by a bit more. Like right now the base duration is 16, with my build, which I think has 170 something percent duration, I have 26 seconds. Yeah, 27 seconds of Spellbind, which is, you know, it's okay. Right, but when using it on myself, it kind of feels low. So maybe increase that base duration to like 25 seconds instead of 16. That could be nice, I guess. If there's going to be any change to it, that could be useful. All right, let's look at a 2. Now, 2 is a bit of a problem child. It's called Tribute, and the idea is you sort of knock down an enemy, and at the same time you leave this thing, which is basically a tribute. You walk into that tribute, and you get one of 4 buffs. Those buffs, the buffs that you get is a direct function of whatever enemy type that you use tribute on. Which means if you're surrounded by heavy units, you're only going to get Entangle? I think this is Entangle. Yeah, if you're surrounded by heavy units, you're only going to get Entangle. If you're surrounded by ranged units, you're only going to get Dust, etc, etc, etc. The problem with this ability is twofold. First, there's too many buffs. There's 4 buffs, and because we're not playing Octavia, where you have full control over which buff you want to get, it's really confusing and really annoying to have to actually aim for a specific enemy type, because then you also have to remember which enemies get you which buffs. And with like 3 races of enemies to choose from, like, you kind of have to remember a whole heap of stuff, and it's just really confusing, because what's a ranged enemy versus what's a heavy enemy? What is an enemy that will get you full moon? What's an enemy that will get you not full moon? Stop. There's like 4 or 5 dimensions of chess going on here, and I don't want to think about it. So this is an ability that I almost never use, and when I use it, I just press it for the hell of it. Like, I don't even use it with purpose. And the second thing is that each ability stacks up to 5 times, which is, like, a stacking mechanic is cool, except this is a stacking mechanic where you have to use your ability 5 times. Now at base, the ability uses 50 energy. Which means in order to get maximum effectiveness on just one buff, you have to hit 5 enemies, which means you have to use 250 energy at base. That's a really steep call, because even with maximum efficiency, we're talking like at least we're talking at least 70 energy just to get maximum effectiveness. And because this is one ability that has 4 buffs, in order to get absolute effectiveness on this ability, you have to use 1000 energy, which is obviously just, it's not gonna happen. You know, you're not gonna have maximum effectiveness on this ability, which kind of sucks in a way. Like, I refer you to Octavia's metronome, which you can get maximum effectiveness if you're really good at controlling yourself, but at least you don't have to use the same ability like 50,000 times in order to get maximum effectiveness. You just have to be really good with timing your stuff, and if you have enough duration, you could potentially max out on the ability. But you only have to press the ability once. You know, like, you only have to press the ability at least once, whereas with this ability with Tribute, you have to press the ability at least 5,000 times, which is a bit of a problem. So I don't like that at all. So in order to combat this, I've looked through the buffs that Tribute gives us right now, and I've decided that Dust, which is an enemy accuracy debuff, and I think it was Entangle, which is an enemy slow. These are the only two ones that really mean anything. Full Moon is cute, but it just gives companion damage, and like these days I tend to run a carrier that doesn't even have a weapon, or a Helios that doesn't have a weapon, so that it doesn't draw fire and blow up while I'm trying to do stuff. And when I'm in Razor Wing, there is no companion, so that's no use at all. So Full Moon's not all that great, and Thorn is a reflection one, and enemies tend to not, enemy damage doesn't tend to scale with enemy armor, for example, or enemy health. They just don't really scale with killing themselves. So reflection is not really all that good. So we'll keep it simple. All ranged enemies will give you dust, all melee enemies will give you entangle. That way it's actually useful. And also the stacking mechanic should either be reduced to 2 or just 1. Just no stacking mechanic. That way, you don't have to waste so much energy to get maximum effectiveness on this ability. Let's keep it simple. Like, keep it simple, stupid. Like, no need to make it a stacking mechanic that takes so much energy in order to make happen. So, that's the idea. Alright, let's talk about her 3. Now, her 3 is the Red-Headed Stepchild, definitely problem child ability in the game. Its premise is really cool, but its execution is absolutely terrible. Now, at the moment, what you see right here, that's actually the solution that I am suggesting, which is that Lantern should not cause the enemy to eventually float the hell away. Because right now, as you see, this dude is floating up. And he will be floating up very slowly, and within 20 seconds he'll be like up all the way over here. He'll essentially float away from the enemies that he is tethering. In a mission, in an actual mission, like with a lot of explosions and shots that are firing, he'll actually float a little bit faster, I find. So that's a bit of a problem. And there's a couple of things I want to do. So first off, right now this ability is kind of not that useful. It's just a mass CC, that's it. The explosion knockdown, that's kind of cool, but that's just more CC. Keep it, I guess, but otherwise it doesn't actually do anything worthwhile. What I'm suggesting is this, okay? So first off, the ability should not cause the guy to float away. So the guy should just continue staying exactly where he is, like he is right now. He just floats like that, and he attracts enemies towards him. Second thing is that he should also provide some extra utility, and I am thinking of a radial, like area of effect heal. So turn him into a healing beacon, a floating healing beacon. Wouldn't that be cool? Just a floating healing beacon, so that you can walk up to it and you can heal yourself. Allies can walk up to it, heal themselves. That way we don't have to rely on Trinity to heal everyone. We can rely on someone like Titania to randomly heal people, which could be an interesting dynamic. That way she could also be a bit of a support caster if that's really what we want. Yeah, that's really the idea for Lantern. Pretty simple change, I reckon. And also her augment, which is Beguiling Lantern, should actually affect all damage types. It's currently only affecting melee damage. Kinda not useful, I would just say. Just do it on all of them. That way she could be like this pretty good, like, support frame. Like a really good support frame, actually. Support damage caster. That could actually make her top tier. That could actually make her top tier. If she becomes like a pretty good jack of all trades, master of something. And finally, her 4. So obviously everyone knows what her 4 is because it's her most popular ability. It's Razor Wing. Now, Razor Wing, like I was saying with the Butterfly passive, the one thing I would do for the Butterfly passive is that when she's in Razor Wing, she should have 12 butterflies instead of 6. And those butterflies would regenerate over a period of time when they die, if they die. Another thing I would do, and this is something that I think Dee has already mentioned, remove the collision damage, because that is just stupid. To fly into a wall, especially in tight corridors inside ships, Arcwing in an enclosed environment like a ship is just really hard, and to smack into things and die is kind of really annoying. So I would just say let's get rid of that, especially since like scraping on the ground sometimes. No, sorry, sometimes scraping on the wall sometimes kind of like also counts as a hit, and that's really, really irritating, and sometimes they end up dying from that, so let's just get rid of that concept altogether. Another thing I would say is if you use your new tribute, you shouldn't have to fly into it because it's kind of really tricky sometimes, especially in a particularly big battle like an ESO. There's a lot of stuff, and when you use your 2 and you look around and suddenly you've lost your tribute and you have to try and figure out where it is, yeah, and then you have to try and fly into it, and sometimes you fly and you miss it. Like, yes, that's potentially a sign of really bad piloting, but that's also really bad game design. So I would just say that if you press your 2, you immediately get the tribute. That's it, and that's only for Razor Wing mode. For regular mode, I'm perfectly fine with having that extra step. It's not that big a deal, but with Razor Wing, it's annoying to fly it in. Yeah. Another thing that I'm not too keen about with Dex Pixie at the moment is the 60 ammo. So right now that of course can be fixed with something like Slip Magazine or Prime Slip Magazine, but are you really going to use those mods? I don't think so. So obviously with the Razor Wing augment, with the high fire rate, that's it, done. And against like Lephantis, that's actually really, really fast. You end up running out of ammo really, really quickly, which makes the Lephantis fight like a little more annoying. So I would say, let's double the ammo capacity. Let's triple the ammo capacity. Let's make it 4 times. Hell, let's I think the word is quintuple the ammo capacity. Let's give Titania a 300 ammo capacity with a 0.5 second reload timer. Let's go crazy. Let's actually go crazy. So I say let's do that, because that way, like, she actually feels better to use. She actually feels a lot better to use as opposed to this 60 ammo right now, especially with the really high fire rates that you can get with her at this particular point in time. And that's it, actually. I'm just looking at my notes. That's pretty much the idea. And what we would end up with is potentially a bit of a support frame, a bit of a damage frame, caster, useful kind of frame that actually has a bit of survivability in the fact that her butterflies would tank some of the damage instead of her. It means that you could potentially get away with the 300 health, shield and health in much the same way that Limbo can get away with his low health. I think it's also 300 because he has that survivability in the form of the Rift. Titania would have that added survivability in the form of her Butterfly Swarm. So that could be really interesting to have, and I think that would make her really, really good. Either really good or a lot more fun than she is right now. Okay, so how are we going? Wow, 23 minutes. Alright, so hope you guys enjoy this. If you did, hit the like button. If you really enjoyed it, maybe consider subscribing to the channel. Feel free to let me know in the comments what you think about this this rework idea and what you would do to change Titania and make her a lot better than she currently is, because her concept is really fun. It's just her execution needs some work. It's not that drastic, actually. Alright, hope you guys enjoy this as I repeat myself again, and until next time, I'll see you guys later. Thanks for watching. Bye!